All right, we need to talk. Men and women aren't doing very well right now, as we've discussed in previous videos. Now let's look how it's specifically hitting men. It's pretty bad. Across the board, self-harm, depression, anxiety, and addictions have been on the rise for decades in Western nations. So what does that look like for men? Right now, men are suffering from a serious loss of identity and purpose compared to previous generations. Nobody knows what healthy masculinity is supposed to be, or even if it exists. This is a massive problem for boys and young men, and it's showing up in men dropping out of school, dying deaths of despair at a disproportionate rate, repeatedly feeling lost and empty, having no sense of direction, retreating into pornography, video games, and drug addictions, and continually worsening gender relations and romantic interests. But why is this? We need to have some real talk about this and cut through the bull, because the way we talk about this problem in general discourse on the internet is absolutely full of stupid crap that we need to quit saying if we want to help our boys and young men survive. There's a number of barriers to having a legitimate discussion about this issue whenever it's raised. For example, number one, well, Dr. G, you're saying men are suffering, but what about women? Okay, so this is kind of like telling a bunch of OBGYN doctors and specialists in women's health, well, what about men? Well, what about them? What the hell does focusing on one group have to do with anything outside that group? Obviously, women deserve thoughtful attention and care, duh. But who the hell says otherwise? Why does everything have to be all or nothing? It doesn't. This objection is stupid, and we need to quit saying it. Number two is either one of two things. Well, the problem is society. Let's blame society. And particularly, this tends to degenerate into let's blame women. Women have too high standards. Women need to quit being so mean to men, blah, 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 blah. Or on the flip side of this, it's men. Men need to quit whining. They need to pull themselves up by their jockstrap or whatever. It's rage bait manosphere stuff. It's all women's fault, blah, blah, blah. How the hell is mindless rage going to help anything? It doesn't. So these objections are also stupid, and we need to quit saying them. Number three, men have had all the advantages up to now, and it's justice that they pay for it by suffering. This is something I have heard. Now, what I say to that is, I have a grandson. He's 5 years old. He loves his mommy and his sister. He wants to save the world from bad guys. He loves dinosaurs and loves to be rambunctious. He never oppressed anybody. But yeah, he needs to pay for the sins of the great-grandfathers. I'm sorry, but fuck that. This objection is really just idiotic. We need to quit saying it. Okay, number four, gender is a social construct and it doesn't exist. Where do I even start with this one? This one, honestly, I think this was born out of a fear that any recognition of innate biological or evolutionary statistical differences between the sexes will automatically lead to misogyny. AKA, well, Dr. G, 100 years ago, biology was used to justify withholding college from women, saying they lack the intelligence and brains, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you know what, folks? That was 100 years ago. We'll let it go. Science has debunked that baloney, but not with ideology or sentiment, but with better science. The existence of biological predispositions is an empirical fact. What we do with that information is where we need to be concerned with the morality of it. Therefore, this argument needs to go too. We need to quit saying it. Number five, Dr. G, why not just be a good person? Why worry about what does it take to be a good man? Fine. How? If I'm going to be good, I have to be a good something. I have to be good at what I am, which is a man or a woman, not just a good person in general in the sort of vague sense. It's let's pretend there's no differences between men and women rhetoric again. It's vague, it's stupid. We need to quit saying that. I could go on and on and on. So what about the solutions? There's several. And this really deserves more material than just one video, but let's just start somewhere. Okay, yes, culture needs to change, I do believe. And men and women can work on themselves as well to be better. Because get this, those two things are not mutually exclusive. What? Yeah, they're not. Boys and young men respond to mentoring. Okay, here's one way to go. They respond to mentoring from men in particular. I definitely saw this in the military. I've seen this in my clinical work as well. Young men crave meaning and purpose, and they crave it from older men. This is why the internet has guys like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate. Young men will take any role modeling over no role modeling. I really just don't think women do this to the degree that men do. And of course, we can criticize that and say, well, men just need to stop, blah, blah, blah. Yes, but that's not how it's operating right now. I'm looking for a solution now. And right now, men are really seem to be craving older male mentors to help them. I think that's probably how it's always been, and there's probably biological predispositions at work there. Okay, but Dr. G, you might say, well, shouldn't everyone just do their own thing, follow their own individual spirit? Don't listen to anyone, blah, 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 blah. Isn't looking for role models weak and you should just look within? Let me put it this way. We've been saying that crap for about 50 years now. Has it helped? No. So maybe try it my way. See what happens. I think men need help managing their sexuality, both for themselves and their potential partners. Probably not going to get a whole lot of love for saying something like that, but it's the reality. Male sexuality is intense and it's two-pronged. Casual encounters are much more interesting to men than women, statistically. Therefore, chances are any woman that you might be interested in, if you're a straight guy, is a lot less interested in that than you might be, which means you need to behave appropriately and as a gentleman. Now, as soon as I say that, of course, in come the criticisms. Oh, chivalry and being a gentleman, that's sexist, it's archaic. People who actually adhere to chivalry were actually awful people, blah, 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 blah. All right, you've heard all this. Again, I actually remember when calling someone ungentlemanly was taken seriously as an insult. It was taken for granted when I was a kid that you, as a man, should be a gentleman. And those who weren't were cads. They were called chauvinist pigs. Remember that phrase? Womanizers. Okay. Yes, the double standard still did exist at that time, and that those men were not slut shamed. Instead, they were cad shamed. Not that that was a word, but that's what they were. It was also seen as a thing you shouldn't be doing. But now we don't do that anymore. And my question for you is, has that helped women? Ask yourself this. Honestly, I don't think it's helped either, men or women. The fact that this standard has drifted away and we no longer talk about this kind of behavior, that hasn't helped either sex. What else? Men need to learn how to defend themselves from a society that selectively targets their weaknesses. Yes, women face this too, but the targets are different. When we're talking about men, one of them is the sexuality I just talked about. This is a weakness that is exploited by giant global megacorporations that produce pornography. Pornography, not to be super prudish about this, but I'm just saying, at real talk, there are some major issues that can happen from the use of it. It is, truth be told, an artificial drug. It's hyperstimulating. It can be ultimately numbing, addictive, pulling people and men into anhedonia, getting them to check out. It is especially damaging to young boys in this sense. A sense of meaning and purpose is another one. Men crave this. Video games provide it. A sense of community and belonging. Now, everyone craves this, but what I'm specifically talking about here is male-only spaces where mentoring is going on. And I don't mean strip clubs and all that kind of stuff like that. I mean where the focus is on development and improvement. I think this craving for male bonding is what's behind the misogyny that you see in some video game groups. It's very toxic and there's no excuse for it. Nevertheless, I think that's what the root of it is. And if we provide a positive and constructive avenue for that sort of thing, you can get it. And I've seen this. I saw it in the military. I was one of the last groups that had an all-male training group when I went into basic training back in the 90s. There's a saying out there that I've heard. I don't remember exactly who says it, but it's pretty straightforward. It's that women bond face to face while men bond side by side. I think this is very true. I've noticed this in psychotherapy as well. It's very difficult to get men into psychotherapy because of this very issue. Psychotherapy, traditionally, two people looking directly at each other and opening up about, at least one of them, opening up about their feelings. Men just have a harder time with that, as opposed to a different approach, which is you metaphorically and sometimes literally sit on a more side-by-side style position and say, let's attack this problem as a team. You and me, we're going to work on this together. Sociologist Harry Broad, for example, suggests that this difference of side-by-side, both literal and metaphorical, versus face-to-face, is how men express closeness, that side-by-sideness that helps to bypass any sort of direct challenging emotions that may emerge in the face-to-face situation. Subtle details like this are what's missing from this discussion about how to help men. Helping men will help women indirectly quite a bit, but subtlety and nuance are lost on these because the internet is where subtlety and nuance goes to die. So let's not have that here on Mental Health Mondays. So my message for all the viewers out there is simply this. Do you want to hear more talk about this from me? Or have I offended everyone and now everyone wants to go home and take their marbles with me? or take their marbles with them? Okay, that's a Generation X phrase, but work with me here. If so, comment below what you want me to target with this subject. If you enjoyed this kind of thing, subscribe and comment. Check out ericgoodwyn.com for some more exclusive stuff. And until then, I'll see you next time.